Hey everyone, hi. I'm actually in the middle of a workout here, but I wanted to pop on live about something because I think it's so important, especially while we're dealing with all this just schooling at home right now. And I'm trying to figure out the best background. So I know parents are really struggling with how much structure to have at home, and they're being thrust upon them is that they have to become teachers and they have to keep in touch with the school and all the lessons and then teach their kids. And it's a lot going on right now for parents. And then in addition to work and everything else. Hi, Natalia. And so I consult with parents. And so I've just been seeing this trend with parents. Hi, Evie. And seeing this trend with parents in terms of struggling with where to set limits, what to enforce, where to let go. And where I usually bring it with my clients is that you need to figure out what your relationship is yourself between structure and freedom. Because what I'm seeing happen, if you look at the generations, so look at the baby boomers. Baby boomers, high structure, low freedom, right? Like that's just how they work. So we are affected and influenced culturally by our, in terms of how we feel about structure and freedom. So then you have the Gen X's, which is me, who I'm really up there on the Gen X's anyway, who have a high desire for freedom and medium sense of structure. And then the generation after that is going to have, I think they're called the Xennials, has more sense of wanting more and more freedom and less structure. So we've had this trend culturally to more and more freedom of choice, freedom of expression when you look at like education and how you structure your day. And this is really important because we have to recognize that we're being influenced culturally, and in order to really distinguish internally what we want and what's going to be helpful to our children, we need to sort of just really be clear on what is influencing us. And the other thing is that I've seen with parents is that, you know, like if they rebelled in high school, if they rebelled as a child, they're rebelling against the authority, they're rebelling against the establishment. And that sense of rebellion, if it never got satisfied, can show up in our parenting, in the desire for freedom and wanting to make sure that our kids have free expression. And I am all for free expression, and I am very much for giving kids some freedom some of the time. But we have to be really clear within ourselves what our relationship is to freedom and structure, and so that we can then develop clarity around what we're bringing into this situation and what's healthy and what's not healthy. Because what happens oftentimes, for example, the example I gave before about someone who rebelled in high school and then really nurtures freedom in their children and then not so much structure, they're enmeshing their own history, their own stuff into their children and not necessarily seeing what their children need. And I'm not saying that freedom for children is not a good thing. I'm just saying we need clarity within ourselves more than anything, because that lack of clarity within ourselves is what causes a problem for our children. So, because if you value freedom over structure and freedom over school, then you should have the right to do that. Hi, Pam. You should have a right to raise your children that way. And if you value structure over freedom, you should have a right to raise your children that way as well. And so we all get to choose, but it's that clarity within ourselves in terms of, thanks, Pam. It's that clarity within ourselves. So I would love to hear from you who's on here, where you lie in the spectrum of like freedom on one end and structure on the other end. Are you more structure oriented or are you more freedom oriented? I'd love to know, for the people who are watching, the people who are on my page, what direction you really tend to take. Because it's really important to understand that. Because if we're now responsible for our children's learning at home and have to integrate that into our schedules, it really helps us to figure out, we have to look at how we are oriented, and if we are intentional about our orientation in terms of structure versus freedom, and what our children need, because there are children who need more structure and there are children who need less structure. So when we put all of that together, our own intentions with our children's needs for structure versus freedom, we can come up with an amazing plan for how we want to deal with school at home. And not only a plan, but the certainty that we gain in how it should look is actually probably even more important, because that's our compass, right? We need to have a compass that's absolutely clear in terms of how we're going to show up and and who we are as a parent and how we're parenting and what our expectations are. That's our compass. And the compass is guided by us reflecting on and figuring out, getting listened to is the practice that I love, in terms of figuring out how much structure we want and how much freedom we want for our children, and then looking at our kids' needs. So I know it's sounds a little complicated. It actually isn't very complicated. It's really 2 steps. One is really figuring out where we stand on structure versus freedom. The second one is, what do our children need? And our children might need something different, like different children. If we have 3 kids, we might have 3 different needs, and you're balancing all that. And that's where it gets a little complicated, is balancing all the needs of different kids. So you might be handling things a little differently depending on the child. So again, let me know where you stand on structure versus freedom. It's a huge question for our times right now, and for people to really figure out. So share this with people who might be struggling with that. Hi, Tangi. Yeah, share this with people who might be struggling with this and trying to figure out how to implement school learning into their lives, and them trying to figure out structure versus freedom. So Tangi, you might have to start from the beginning here, but this might be interesting to you as a parenting topic. And would love your thoughts too. Please comment below. So, hey mama. All right. Well, I hope you all, I'm going to end it here, but I hope you all have a beautiful, amazing day. And, I'd love to know how your journey goes with this, with figuring out your structure and your freedom. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.